Welcome to Food for Thought, everyone. The calling point for this show is to bring sports to you in a different light, and bringing the show to you with me and my co-host Dylan Hartley.
Hello, 1 month later, we finally made it.
We finally made it, that is true. So, as always, tune into the Mothership Show on Monday, Knuckle Sandwich every Thursday, Ducks on the Pond every Sunday. You can find all these shows on iTunes and Spotify, and we're currently transitioning off of SoundCloud, so just go ahead and make that switch to Spotify now. It'll make it easier for everybody. So, the emphasis of this show is to kind of bring you that Saturday morning sports podcast. Saturday morning, you could be mowing the lawn, working out, whatever the case may be, and you want to hear some sports in the morning. So this is kind of what that show is going to bring you, and we're going to bring it to you in a way that, it's not dependent on what's happening in sports that week. So the two topics we're going to talk about this week is how we would construct our football team, like what we would place the most importance or emphasis on, and then after that we'll talk about how systems in sports, coaches, franchise styles or systems affect the individuals in those systems. So to start off with, we'll just do football team construction here, and we've each ranked positions or groupings of players, and we've got a hierarchy of them. And so my first three, I have the offensive line. For my second position or grouping of players, I have a good front seven. So, your 3-4, your 4-3, whatever the case may be. And then at number 3, I have franchise QB. So, Dylan, let's go ahead and hear your top 3 guys.
My top 3, I'm going with the franchise QB first. And then I'm going to defensive. You can defensive front 7 or secondary, whichever way you want to build. I choose the defensive front 7, but I think you could build around a secondary first also. And but yeah, I'm going front 7, and then third I got an O-line.
Yeah. Okay, so we do have some differences there. I mean, we have roughly the same positions or groupings of players, but our hierarchy is different. I hear what you're saying with the franchise QB, but you look at teams like the Colts, maybe even the Detroit Lions, they're kind of overpaying for a franchise quarterback, and you can see where it's hindered them in other spots. The Colts, they don't have a horrible offensive line, and their defense last year was not very good, and it was old. I've seen teams where it works building that defense or building that offensive line first, and then getting a QB later in the draft or going out and paying for one later. You saw it happen with the Broncos with Peyton Manning. They built that defense up and went and got Peyton. You saw it with the Seahawks. They built that defense up and then got Russell Wilson. You're kind of seeing it a little bit now with the Cowboys. They have one of the best offensive lines in football, and they have a guy back there in Dak who is competent. He's not going to turn the ball over, and he's got some wheels too. He can get out of the pocket and scramble a little bit, and that offensive line really kind of propels him forward. So that was just my kind of thought with putting the defense and the offensive line in front of the franchise QB. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why you had that franchise QB first?
I don't know. I kind of look at if you get a player like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, they change the game so much. If I'm going through a draft with all the players at NFL now, and I get to have them in their prime, my first pick is going to be a Rodgers or a Brady. I want someone who can take control of the game. Offensive line is really important. Your defense really important. But if you have a quarterback out there who's going to be a team leader, that can, like Tom Brady could call his own audibles. Even like a guy like Phillip Rivers, I know he's not really succeeded, but he's been a pretty decent quarterback throughout his career who can see.
Right.
He does make dumb mistakes, and forces dumb things, but you have a guy that can sit there and see what's going on the defensive side of the field. He knows what defense. Tom Brady knows what defense the other team's running 9 times out of 10, maybe even more than that, 9.9 times out of 10. He can make a quick adjustment to run the ball. He can make a quick adjustment to throw a check down to the audible to an open spot. Somebody that can do that. I'm just saying he can just do that before a defender can get to him.
Right. I mean, you have a draft, and the draft year. I mean, even this past NFL draft, with all the QB hype that was there, even with a couple years back with Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III, you would be stupid to pass on those guys. I mean, those are generational type of talents coming out of the draft, and I hear your point on picking those guys, but for me, I think I would try to build my team first. If that obvious franchise QB isn't there, I'm going to build everything else around him, and then bring in a guy who's just not going to beat us, and kind of see where that takes us in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, if the quarterback's not there, then don't force it. Like, I don't. We don't know how Baker Mayfield's going to turn out, but I mean, there's six quarterbacks, in the first round, wasn't it? It was Darnold. I mean, the Browns have obviously they're building on that D line, that defense. They're building all around.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't want to force a franchise quarterback. Like, I don't see Baker Mayfield with the talents that Brady, that Luck, that Wentz has shown. Like Rodgers. I don't see any of that. Like, I'm not forcing a franchise quarterback, but I'm saying if that franchise quarterback is there, like if the Browns were, the Colts, like they took Luck, like they didn't. I mean, their team's not great. Like they took Luck first to build around their. I mean, you gotta have a franchise quarterback in that system. Is what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
I agree with you. If that franchise quarterback's not there, then I'm building all around until I get that franchise quarterback. But I think the key piece in building a team, you got to get that franchise quarterback in there.
Yeah, so maybe it's just like identifying that franchise quarterback too,
Yeah.
I mean, Matt Stafford is a very good quarterback, and he's going to win you games, and he's going to put up numbers, but at the same time, is he really worth that contract he got? Is Kirk Cousins or Jimmy Garoppolo or those guys really worth that contract? Even a guy like Blake Bortles, So I haven't seen a system like that where you overpay for a guy you think is going to be your franchise quarterback work. You see a guy like Wentz or Manning or Brady or Rodgers or whoever the case may be out there. Yeah, those are the guys you want. But
looking at the past Super Bowl winners, I mean, I'm pulling up the exact list right now. I should know it off the top of my head, but I don't. But your past Super Bowl winners, I mean, it was Super Bowl in general. It was, Nick Foles ended up winning last year's, but I mean, Wentz had a great season throughout, and he's showing promise of being a franchise quarterback. I mean, the number one seed because of Wentz, and a great defense. I mean, they're a great team all around. But I mean, you have Brady in there, Brady again, Peyton Manning, Matt Ryan was in the last one, but then you have Brady versus Wilson. You have Wilson beating Manning. You have Joe Flacco, who had a really good year, and Colin Kaepernick. So that's probably the worst quarterback situation out of that group.
Yeah. But, the thing is, with that list you named there, though, at the time, Russell Wilson, I don't think he was highly regarded like he is now. Then, especially in that first Super Bowl. But then on top of that, Peyton Manning, I feel like he kind of fell into the mold I was talking about because Denver really amped that defense up for a lot of years and then brought Peyton on. And then a guy like Tom Brady, he's taken pay cuts for so many years to make his team more successful. So I think there's some overlap. Yeah, and I think there are definitely overlaps in what we're talking about here. It's just, like we said earlier, how do you structure that hierarchy? What do you value first? So,
if you were building a team off of, we drafted right now with everybody we have, no primes, nothing. We're taking a fantasy draft with right now they restarted the NFL. Who's your number one pick? Like
current players right now only. That's what we're talking about.
Current players right now. If every team had to drop their players, and you had to repick right now.
You're gonna think I'm just saying this. Because you're going to think I'm just saying this because I have my offensive line first, but I wholeheartedly would draft Tyron Smith first.
Tyron Smith, okay. I mean, I mean, that's not bad. I agree with it. I mean, he's up there. He's definitely in the top 10 picks, I think.
Yeah.
I just can't go. I can't pass a Wentz, a Luck,
Aaron Rodgers, guys like that.
Yeah, well, Rodgers, I can almost see slipping just because he's got 6-7 years probably, right? You say maybe a little less.
Yeah, the thing is, Aaron Rodgers is the difference between 10 and 12 games versus 4 right now for the Packers. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he moves the dial a lot. But for me, I mean, you can load that offensive lineup, and then you could roll a guy. I mean, there are a lot of different guys you could put behind that offensive line, and including running backs, too, that would help with that. So, but, with the last 3 here on our list, for 4, 5, and 6, I'm going to go secondary. Then I'm going to go running backs and tight ends, and then I'm going to go wide receivers. So let's hear where you're kind of at with that bottom part of your list.
I went with a go-to target and a running back. So I think you need a go-to target and a running back there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need your defensive, the secondary. So whatever I didn't build on first, I went defensive front 7, so I'm going to go secondary here. And then the rest of your skill players, if your go-to target's a big tight end like Gronk, or if your go-to target's a big wide receiver like Odell or Julio, Antonio Brown, then I think you just fill in the rest of the spots with the skill players. But you got to get that go-to target and running back, whether it's a receiver, tight end, as your go-to target, and then the rest of your skill players falls to last.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, you're going to find... Yeah, there's a lot of guys that drop passes and stuff, but we both have quarterbacks up there. If you have a quarterback that can deliver a receiver the ball 5 times out of, 5, if you deliver a ball 4 out of 5 times, any receiver I think is going to catch it without getting hit.
Right.
So
we have some slight differences here again. For me, I mean, I've had the secondary in these last 3 here. I had the secondary highest just because I'm a firm believer in building that defense. I think that's important. Where I go next, though, I go running backs and tight ends before wide receivers. And my thought is, I'm building this football team, and I'm trying to build it, from the ball out. And so, with running backs and tight ends, those are different positions in the sense that they create mismatches for cornerbacks and linebackers. If you have a running back who can catch balls and run in between the tackles outside, you can draw different mismatches there in the play action. If you have a running or a tight end who can block really well in the pass and the run game, it's like adding an extra lineman out there who can also go and catch passes, who's an eligible downfield receiver. So when you force those tight ends, or when you force those linebackers rather, and those cornerbacks to kind of figure out who to guard out of the backfield and on the line of scrimmage, it forces mismatches across the middle and then deep balls as well, because then you have to pull guys out of position to come and help. So that's just kind of where I'm at with the running backs and tight ends. And then I have them above the receivers just because I feel like wide receivers are almost icing on the cake, so to speak. Like if you have an amazing team, and then you also have, let's say a Julio Jones or a Calvin Johnson, that's just like extra. You know what I mean? That's just, it's not necessary, but if you have it, that's great. That's kind of how I view the wide receiver there.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I'm not disagreeing with you. I like that philosophy also.
Mm-hmm.
The way I kind of looked at it, and it all falls in order, which I'll go into that later, but. If the that's why I have O-line third and the quarterback first. You have a franchise quarterback, and you have a go-to target. This is what I'm getting at with that. So that's why I went back to franchise quarterback. But you have a go-to target right there. So if you could get a go-to, if you can snag a franchise quarterback and snag a Julio or a Calvin Johnson, even Anquan Bolden whenever the Ravens won the Super Bowl. If your quarterback gets in trouble with a few gaps in that offensive line, that you can go to a guy and hit him, or Gronk, man, I mean that's just so valuable. Like, I mean, like what they say, if Odell's covered, he's still open.
Right.
Like, if you have someone like that, that's why I have a go-to target. I think that's a really valuable. Actually, before I made the list, I had him up higher, but I kind of moved it back just a little bit. Then you got to build that defense, like I said. But also, what I'm big on defense, but the best defense is offense. If you can keep your defense off the field, they can't get scored on. They can't, they're not getting tired. They don't give up yards. As long as and I'm gonna take it back to the Rams days, and this is why I value an offense too, and I build a lot of my offense before my defense. The Rams had in St. Louis, they had a top 5 defense on paper, but they had no offense to keep them off the field. Their offense was 3 and out, turnover, 3 and out. That the defense is very important. That's why I go pass rush first over secondary, and I put secondary down towards the bottom.
Yeah.
If you could put pressure on the quarterback and stop the run, it's hard for that quarterback to make throws anyway. All you got to do is cover a guy 3 to 4 seconds if you have a good pass rush. That's why my defensive front 7 is so important. And then the rest of the skill players, you see all the time. Players just break out. Random skill players just break out. Like Hogan for the Patriots is one that comes to mind for me. But that, again, Tom Brady makes guys like that good. That franchise quarterback makes your skill player, rest of your skill players good. You just gotta trust what he's doing and trust the system.
Right. I think we kind of had the same philosophy, just different sides of the ball, I had the secondary above, skill position players like the running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, in the sense that, your secondary at times can bail you out with, deflections, coverage downfield, interceptions, that kind of stuff. But you're kind of viewing the skill position players in that same sense that, like you said, if Odell Beckham's covered, he's still open. So you kind of had that safety blanket on offense. If the pocket's collapsing for your quarterback, he gets outside of the pocket and have to make a play, you do have this safety blanket or insurance, so to speak, in that good, skill position player.
And on top of that skill position player, Odell is and Antonio Brown, they're so quick at running routes.
Yeah.
And they can get open super fast. So even if it's not breaking down, you have a guy that's going to be open and catch the ball in traffic. Larry Fitzgerald, man, he's one of my favorite receivers. Him and Calvin Johnson, probably my 2 favorite receivers all time. Randy Moss is up there too.
Yeah.
But and Randy Moss is a great example. If something was busted, who are you looking for downfield? They're just throwing it up to Randy.
Right. Rightfully so too.
So and that's how mine kind of all falls in order. Like the franchise quarterback's going to deliver to the go-to target if the O-line's not completely set, but I'm still focusing on an O-line. It's 3rd on my list.
Yeah.
But it's not number 1. That's why it's just all in order right there. And I put a lot of thought into it, and it's hard to explain, and it's hard to do over audio, but it kind of gives you some sense of where we're at with it by explaining it.
Right. And so, I felt like it was good to talk about what we valued in constructing a football team, given, that football season's right around the corner. But, our next topic here is, how the systems in sports affect the individual. And I think the most apparent example of this we have right now is the whole Kawhi Leonard when he left San Antonio kind of situation with Pop. So let's just go ahead and talk about that one first. This is one that's pretty interesting to me. Kawhi Leonard, he's a guy who in high school he wasn't that highly recruited. He wanted to go to the big programs. He wanted to go to a UCLA kind of program, wound up going to San Diego State. Then he gets drafted to the Spurs, and he still wants to. You didn't know that at the time, but he wanted to play for the Lakers. He wanted to go to a big market in his hometown there. It didn't work out that way. And he's a quiet, soft-spoken guy. He's in a culture in basketball that, preaches silence, secrecy, getting over yourself, being a part of a team. And, as a result, that kind of showed in his shoe contract with that first shoe contract he had with Jordan. He was making $500,000 annually. So, and then on top of that, Kawhi Leonard, people many times regard as a top 10 player. But let's say, he went to a bigger franchise where he was asked to do more in a big market with that limelight. He could be, in many people's eyes, a top 3 player. He could be right behind Durant and LeBron. So I think that's an interesting dynamic there. It seemed like Pop's great system promoted more of the system and suppressed more of the individual. Let's hear your thoughts on that, Dylan.
Yeah, I am big on Kawhi Leonard. I think he is a top 3 player. I think he also, I don't think he handled his situation in San Antonio very well. But yeah,
I agree.
You hit on a lot of points. He was a Finals MVP,
youngest ever.
Youngest ever Finals MVP. And he came. He's in a system where he can't. Well, now he's not, but he was in a system where he's just overshadowed and overlooked.
Yeah.
And he's putting up big numbers, like just quiet big numbers. for that system. Like, I mean, outside of Tim Duncan and Pop's system, there's not anybody else besides Kawhi that really stands out in the system.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, you hit on the shoe deal, the $500,000 shoe deal. I think he's a top 3 player easily.
Yeah, I agree.
And what was James Harden's shoe deal? I think it was like
$300 million or something like that.
Yeah, a $300 million shoe deal, and I mean, and James Harden doesn't play the ball 2 ways. But the thing is James Harden's the man in Houston. You know, as soon as he went to Houston, he was the man. You know, he was the guy who's putting up the 40-point games. The Kawhi doesn't get that kind of recognition, but that's because, you know, Pop's the type of coach that, you know, you hush your mouth, don't talk to the media unless, you know, your injury, don't speak on your injury type of guy. I'll speak on your injury. And you kind of heard that with, you know, you're kind of seeing that with the Bulls from the Jets with, you know, that's something that recently happened. You know, Terrell Pryor spoke on his injuries, and Todd Bowles told him to shut his mouth.
Yeah,
like that's kind of fallen into the same system. Like, Todd Bowles is a type of coach that the system is bigger than the individual.
Yeah, and you know, they're going to 2 things here. I told Leighton on Hump Day Hoops Hysteria, you know, maybe a few months back now, that Greg Popovich is an elite company in the sense that he is one of 2 coaches to own a franchise. And by own a franchise, I mean when people do like the name association right now, people would name Greg Popovich with the Spurs more than they would name Kawhi Leonard. And I think the same thing would happen with Brad Stevens and the Celtics, and we'll talk about him in a little bit too. And just kind of wrap up the Kawhi conversation talking about the shoe deal. There was kind of a hangover effect with him being suppressed by that system. Even when he got traded to Toronto, he got offered a shoe deal extension with Jordan for 4 years, $22 million. That's, even the 4 years, $22 million, that's a really low number for a guy like you think is a top 3 player. I mean, I'm going to say he's a top 5 player for sure. I mean, that's a really low deal. I hit on Brad Stevens already, but, you know, he's a system guy too. And Brad Stevens' system, you're kind of seeing the effects with his system and its effects on Kyrie Irving and Terry Rozier as well. You know, people in this past offseason were mentioning maybe the possibility of trading Kyrie for Kawhi Leonard and then just rolling Terry Rozier out there, because the thought is that Brad Stevens makes Terry Rozier a competent player. You bring in a top 3, a top 5 player to that team and still roll out a very competent, capable, you know, B-, B+ kind of point guard in Brad Stevens' system. So what are your thoughts on that, Dylan?
I think Kyrie wanting to be the man of a franchise went to the wrong place with Brad Stevens.
It looks that way.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the finals that they ended up beating the Warriors. How many 40 did he put up? 1 or 2 40-point games with LeBron. You know, he's not going to put up the numbers he put up in Cleveland. He's not going to put up the numbers he could have put up anywhere else. He could have went somewhere with a good, solid team, but or with good, solid players. And what is that? Who is it? Is it talks that he and Jimmy Butler are wanting to go to a team in the East, and like an unnamed team in the East now? Yeah,
it's New York. That's what the rumors are.
That's what I was going to say to New York. I just didn't want to completely be wrong, but you know, I think he's already feeling that in the system he's not the man. And I know he was traded, but I mean, you know, right now in the NBA, and you see it with Kawhi, he was traded to the Raptors, and he says, well, I don't, you know, he says there's reports saying that he doesn't have to play if he doesn't want to.
Right. So
that's kind of where we're all getting at with the system thing, is these guys are trying to be bigger in the system that they're not going to be bigger than. I feel like he's already unhappy in Boston pretty much because he's not the man. And
yeah, you can already get, you know, rumblings and senses that, you know, his individual star power and recognition is being diminished by Brad Stevens. I mean, they had these injuries occur to them, Gordon Hayward, Kyrie, and he just takes these band of younger players, these misfit toys, and I mean, he just elevates them to where they compete with a LeBron James-led team. And the thing is, Kyrie Irving left the Cavaliers to be the man, And the way it turned out is he wasn't going to lead a team to a finals, even if he stayed in Cleveland or if he was playing in Boston, because it's clearly Brad Stevens who, kind of leads that ship there, so to speak.
And I think they were better as a team when Kyrie went out.
Yeah.
The ball moved around more. Kyrie wasn't dribbling around.
Yeah. Well, Terry Rozier played a really good defense. And the thing is, when you lose a guy who's so ball dominant, you go from guarding one guy, and when I say ball dominant, obviously I'm talking about Kyrie. When you lose a guy who's so ball dominant, you wind up, instead of guarding one man, you wind up guarding the ball, and that's what Cleveland had to do. And as a team, they are not a very good team defense, so it kind of played to Brad Stevens' strength in a way.
And I think they're better. They're gonna, obviously, if Kyrie were to be traded, because if there's reports of him not staying in Boston, then I wouldn't keep him, because this is his contract year, right? Like, he's gonna be a free agent after this year.
I believe so, yeah.
So why not get something out of Kyrie? And you don't even have to get much. Get future picks and a couple players, because Gordon Hayward's a good Gordon Hayward, I think, fits that. We don't know yet because of his tragic injury, but
right.
I think Gordon Hayward fits that system well. Terry Rozier does fit that system well. Those guys are stepping up. Jason Tatum, he was him and Brown were incredible in that late season postseason run for him. You don't need a guy who's going to dribble the ball that much. You need guys who are going to go out there and work their ass off in that system.
Right. And last point on this, Greg Popovich says that he drafts guys who have already gotten over themselves, and it doesn't seem like Kyrie has reached that point in his career where he's gotten over himself and he's willing to accept, less, I don't want to say responsibility, but less recognition to achieve more team success. I think that's evident by him wanting to go to New York. The last one we'll talk about here is Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And, Tom Brady is a top quarterback. He's a Mount Rushmore quarterback. There's no denying that. But there's also no denying, Bill Belichick's system that he has in play and what he tries to do. And the only reason I mentioned Tom Brady here with Bill Belichick's system is simply because, you look at a guy who's won 5 Super Bowls in the modern era. He's, top 5, 4, 3, whatever the case may be, in most passing statistics in the NFL. But there, are people out there who don't view him as the greatest quarterback ever. And I would say that is a sign of that Bill Belichick system suppressing Tom Brady. Tell me what you think on that.
I love, I hate the Patriots, but I love Tom Brady. I think there's and obviously I don't root for Tom Brady. I just think he's great, but I think there's a difference in there's two types of quarterbacks. There's your athletes like Aaron Rodgers. Like, I think Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah.
But his accolades don't show it, obviously, with what he's got going on in Green Bay. But Tom Brady is a great game manager, and he fits Bill Belichick's game managing style.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this in all positions outside of even the quarterback. But Bill Belichick, if you don't fit his thing, you're out. Tom Brady has fit perfect and won 5 Super Bowls with it. But if Tom Brady goes to a struggle, if Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers switch, what happens there?
Yeah.
Does Tom Brady win games? And I think he is a difference, like you said, with Rodgers, is a difference with 4 to 10 to 12 wins right now.
Yeah, you would think.
Brady, I think, is the difference with a little less. I don't think Brady can get out and make plays like Rodgers does. But
not at this stage in his career, at least.
Yeah. So, I don't know. But other examples with this is like, Logan Ryan, Logan Ryan's out. He wanted the max contract after that Super Bowl saving interception, and what Belichick said no. Jamie Collins,
Yep.
He wanted a max contract, sent him to the Browns. And what did he do with the Browns? He ain't doing nothing.
Right.
It's Bill Belichick's system makes all these players good. And I think he makes Brady better than what he is. Brady is an exceptional quarterback. He is a top 10 quarterback, top 5 quarterback all time, but that's because he's in Belichick's system. I think he's a little under what he is out of Belichick's system.
Okay. So let me ask you this, just out of curiosity here. Are you feeling Brady's more... Do you view Brady as more of the GOAT or Brady more as a game manager then?
Brady, I mean, with the Super Bowls, he is the GOAT, I think. But
Yeah.
as a quarterback, he's just the best game manager, I think. You know, he can manage you a game anywhere, but he's got to be in that right system to do it. And I mean, Belichick's system is the perfect system.
Right. I agree. I mean, his system is amazing. I feel like a lot of people would thrive in his system. So I don't think it's exclusive to, Tom Brady in the sense that he has made Tom better. But I do think that's interesting. I mean, this is a good example as any when talking about how a system, affects an individual. Due to the sense that, sorry about that, due to the sense that, like you said, people view him as a game manager, the best game manager, but in the same breath, he is one of the greatest ever. I don't think if a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning were winning this many Super Bowls, I'm not so sure that people would be saying those same comments, So that's just, it's hard to explain there.
I could see about maybe Peyton Manning, because, I mean, he's a great game manager too, I think. He's a really hell of a quarterback too, and I think he's a better overall quarterback than Brady.
Yeah.
But I mean, the same situation, if he's in a system where I think he's had really good systems too. That Broncos system was really good. That Colts system when he went to, I mean, if he was in Brady's system, I mean, if he was in Rodgers' situation, he can't make those plays Rodgers makes.
Yeah, not many people can.
Yeah, I mean, even so, there's quarterbacks that could do it in different ways, but there's no one that could do it like Rodgers. And I think Rodgers, over these quarterbacks that have played in the same era, Rodgers is the best quarterback out of all these players. Rodgers is better than Manning. Rodgers is better than Brady. And if you go back and bring in players like Montana, Bradshaw, just everybody, I think Rodgers is the best all-around athlete. Maybe not athlete, but best. I think he's the best NFL player ever.
Yeah, I hear you. So
he's an exceptional athlete.
Yeah, and I think that again, points to how these systems in sports, oppress players or maybe suppress them a little bit. And you kind of talked about it already, but just a preview for next week's show. We'll talk about who is the greatest quarterback ever. It's really, in my opinion, I think about a 3-horse race between Brady, Rodgers, and Manning. But then we'll also discuss, who is the GOAT between LeBron James and Michael Jordan. We'll kind of break that down and give our food for thought, I guess, on that one. Dylan, before we sign off, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Man, I think we hit this. I think it's going to be a fun show for you guys. It's going to be little short segments like this, but it gives you a little like exactly what it sounds, food for thought. It's going to give you something to think about outside of sports, and I think it's going to be a super interesting show. Like, we're going to put in some research to it. We're going to give you guys a maximum effort like we do in every show, but I mean, this is kind of what you're going to get. This is a small sample of what you're going to get. You're going to get a lot of fun things to talk about, and even have discussions with your friends if you guys listen. So keep listening, keep tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Dylan, you said it best. I'm going to go ahead and sign this off now. Everybody, thanks for listening. Be sure to tune into the Mothership Show on Monday, Knuckle Sandwich every Thursday, Ducks on the Pond on Sunday. I already said we're on iTunes and Spotify. We're switching over from SoundCloud, so go ahead and make that switch to Spotify now. Thanks for listening, and be sure to listen for next week, okay?